Right, let's show you what we've got to do. What I'm going to try and do is replicate this. I showed you this before, but you get a fair idea of what I try and, what's got to be done, So my idea is, if we work from behind as this was worked originally, if we take a similar thickness piece of leather, we'll use this as a trial piece, and then we can take it from there. First thing we've got to do is wet it, case it, what they call case it, which is turn the leather very, very soft. We case it on both sides, which will make the leather very, very soft, and it'll make it far more pliable to an impression. What we've got to do. See how that's changing colour? This is the colour of the original. That's how it was. When it wets, it goes a lot darker, and then as it dries, it generally gets lighter. Now it's such a stage where it can be worked. You can't have it soaking wet, otherwise it will just pop up again. You always work it on a hard surface. Those who are rich people will have marble. The originals would have marble. Sorry, I've got to have a piece of slate, which was at one time one of the shelves out of an old larder in one of the houses round here, and got to be in Wales, do as the Welsh do and have a piece of slate. It keeps the leather cold, stops it drying out too fast, and keeps it workable. You're going to have to bear with me when I keep on, all this is unscripted. This is just for your benefit, to give people an idea of what goes on in the workshop and what I'm trying to do and how I go about it. Right, here we go. We always work on the reverse side, which is a flesh side of the hide. That's the grain side, which would be the hair side of the hide. What we've got to try and replicate is this, which was sandwiched between two wooden pattern blocks. So that the leather there would be one pattern block like that, and then another one, and the leather was sandwiched between. Then it would be pressed and pressed and pressed until it embossed this particular pattern out, and then it was left to dry. I'm going to try and replicate that using some tools that I've got around the workshop to give a similar effect. It's never going to be the same, but you see what I'm trying to do here, we'll just at random punch out these raises so that we can try and at least keep the new binding in keeping. We'll see if that comes out. Now you can see there that they've, they're like little blisters, exactly what that would have been. So what we'll do is we'll carry on a little bit, and then we'll try and get the bigger bits in between. Once this has dried, it'll dry rock hard, and then we can go on to the next step, which is to dye the leather, and then try and put a little bit of gilding on. We'll just do this at random. This is the bit I like, really precise, as random as you like. That's a bit like a bloody woodpecker. Right, we'll just do that bit there. You'll see how it's all blistered up there. I hope you can. If I bring it up here, you might be able to get a better idea and hold it for you in the light. There you go. There you are. You can see how it's raised those blisters. They will dry. We'll try and get some smaller ones in between those now, to give it a bit more of a random effect. Use another tool, which should, with a bit of luck, come through. Well, the smaller. No, that's still quite large. Go that way down. I'll even go down further to that way. Will that give us a smaller piece? Yes, it does, I think, but I've got to be very careful it doesn't go straight through, because the leather is very, very, very soft, like that, and then it actually goes straight through the leather, which we don't need. But if I go very gently and take my time, it should come up with a random pattern all over it. You can see I've got another piece of leather underneath it. The reason why I've done that is to try and cushion it a little bit you don't want, you know, I want this rounded head on the blister rather than a flat raised piece, which is which would happen if I put it straight against the slate. And you can see the dents that it's made in there. That's given it a more of a random effect. And you can see the little blisters and the big blisters. Well, that's what we're after. I think what I'll do now is switch off for a second, then I'll get one. Here you can see this is one that's dried now, and it has again. You can see how it's less visible when it's dry. It's there you go. It's a lot lighter now it's dried. It's gone a lot harder, which is going to make it easier to put on back onto the panels. But what we'll do now is dye it, and then put on a little bit of gilding, and you can see how that works. Alright, well, it's an oil-based dye. I like to try and keep everything as natural as I can. You'll see when it goes on, we've got to try and replicate a background colour for this, so that it's going to match in. When it's hand dye, you get more dye in some places and less in others, which gives it a mottle effect. Also, the oils in the leather will affect how it takes the dye. Never forget when you're going to do the edges as well. This is only a trial piece before I do the originals, but you give you an idea, and you can see it soaks in quite well. It's virtually dry now, so what I'm going to have to try and do is give it a certain amount of gilding that sits on the top, and then age it again. I've got a certain amount of gilding here, just a small amount, just to try on here, and you'll see how the difference it makes with this as it goes on. We apply it. This is just this particular gilding that I want on. You can see the gold going on. It still gives you a background colour. It doesn't cover as though it's completely new. Certain amount soaks into the leather, into the grain, so it gives you a I'll show you the effect it's given you. It's quite goldy now, but then we're going to have to take the tops off all of those areas. You can see it's still a little bit dry, so that we can give it the effect that it has. We're trying to take off and give it some wear now. I've got a very fine piece of carborundum here, and you can see where I've taken the tops off all the blisters, and the effect of what I'm trying to do is coming along. And what it needs now is to darken the background like I have here, but keep a certain amount of gilding, but the wear marks on top as well, and it will enhance it and darken it down, which we will do. I've got an additive here which will do it for you. Now you can see it happening and how the background goes down, and the areas that I've rubbed have gone a lot darker but left the gilding in the background as it would have been from just general wear. And when that dries, it should give you, I mean, you'll be able to see really at the end of the day, as a comparison between the two, how it's come up. I know there's a lot smaller in between, but as a character, try and keep it in character. I think it's not far off. So when it dries and the shine's off it, you'll see what I mean. We've got the frame back on the table, now it's fixed on the backing board, and you'll get an idea of what I'm trying to do. If you see around the edges, you see this is where the binding is missing. The original one we have, which is there in the centre, we have the two uprights and a piece on one end over there. So I'll take you in a bit closer, and then you can see what we're trying to achieve. There's the original there. So I think as we've got that, the original, that's the one that I've made, which isn't too far away from what was there originally. Now if I showed you what it had been put on many years ago, that's what was on it in its place. So I think that has got to be a slightly better than that, but there had been also an addition of that, which is a PVC edging plastic stick-on piece, which had another ongoing repair that somebody had done, which looks nothing like we can do. So I think we can do better than these two by putting on this one here, and if we make it broad enough, then we will bring it right up to the edge, from the edge of the pattern right up to the edge there. I will make it broad enough to bring it that way, and it'll cover it all up, and it'll be in keeping with that one when it's gilded a bit more. So we've got to have another look at the frame here before I start doing that. That's going to be long-winded to try and get that. You've seen how the process is done. We can do a little bit of gilding now on dyeing on the frame here where it's worn and the colour's gone, and a little bit of re-gilding before these bindings on. The bindings will go on as a final thing. Before the main gilding, we do the main gilding work on the panels. To give you an idea, it's the same dye as what we used on the leather, and you can see where it takes only on the worn areas. Because it's an oil-based dye, the original gilding will repel the oil, so it doesn't alter the colour, it just highlights it along there, darkens the open wood, the wood that is left open and bare, so that darkens that, and that will allow us to put a slight bit of gilding on there just to enhance it, to stop the wear, and to bring it a bit more in keeping with what they're after.